to Griot Connects podcast, and we're here today to do our Bedside Books episode, and this is where we talk about all that cool stuff that we are reading that's stacked up
high
on the nightstand.
Yeah. Or it actually is the nightstand.
Is the nightstand at some point, right? Yeah, so we're going to share with you the books that we love, why we love them, and just kind of hope that you love them too. So I'm just going to jump right in, Tina, and, see what we've got today. The book that I selected actually for today, I've got 3 of them.
All right.
That I'd like to talk about. So Let's roll in. The first one is called The Black Box. Mm-hmm. It's by Henry Louis Gates, and we all know Henry Louis Gates.
Yes, we do.
Dr. Henry Louis Gates, Mr. Smarty Pants himself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we all know he's a Harvard professor. He is the gentleman that has done The Roots and, Finding Your Roots and helping us all know where we originated and all of that good stuff, and a high proponent of ancestry research and such. Well, he's also a prolific writer, by the way.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this book immensely, and I am recommending it because it's my sense that this book is also representative of why I wanted to do the podcast from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, let me tell you about it. So for me, the podcast is about amplifying Black voices, the authors, the writers, those who are taking their ideas and their imagination and their perspective, and they're putting it on paper. Mm-hmm. And in this book, what he talks about is how that has happened historically since the enslaved were brought to this continent.
Right.
And what they have done to own that narrative, to construct that narrative, and how the narrative is different from one writer to the next. Mm-hmm. And he just tries to help us understand how that happens. And so let me just tell you, he starts off by explaining this black box concept, meaning that when we are self-identifying, whether it be a job application, a mortgage application, any way that we have to tell the world who we are, we have to check a box.
Okay.
That's what society has defined.
Okay.
And so we have to tell the world that we live in a certain box. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, because we are checking that box, we don't always get to tell the story because of who you are in that box. We're not always telling our own story.
Well, history is generally the victors telling the story.
Yeah, to the victors go the spoil, right? And so in that concept, I get that. But what he's basically saying is this. People like W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, they took their perspectives and put it on paper. And by doing so, it introduced a narrative where we could look at ourselves from our own voice, from our own perspective. And that was kind of how it started out. We are able to tell our own stories. I use the example, if the two of us went to an event, we go to a concert, for example. We go to that concert, we partying, rocking it out, and we come home and we tell the story about the concert.
Right.
It's not going to be the exact same description.
No, it's not, because we're 2 different people.
Hello. That's all he's getting at, is that individuals dictate the perspective, and the perspective dictates what lands on that paper. Okay. And I love that simply because, and let me tell you why I love that. That's why we're bringing all these different voices to Griot Connects, is so that you hear a diverse story. You don't hear just one story. You hear from historians and mystery writers and romance novels and fiction story writers and so forth. And all of their voices collectively begin to form a complete community, a persona for a complete community. And so I love that about Griot Connects. I think that's what we are here to do.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're here to do.
In this book, one of the things that he approaches that I think makes it unique and a must read. Who must read this book? Let me tell you. The people who should read this book include leaders, organizers, people who are community activists, people who are interested in collaborations, and of course, people like us who are interested in amplifying that Black voice. And what this book, I think, offers that is unique and interesting is that it explores the diversity of voices within our community.
You mean we're not a monolith?
Hello, we're not a monolith.
Yeah. Well.
That SAT word that you use.
Oh, come on, man. You know what a monolith is.
Yeah, I kind of know what a monolith is, but tell the people what a monolith is.
A monolith is basically, a group of the same people who think the same things about the same stuff.
Right. And that
we
is
are not
us. And in fact, no one is. That's his point. And so we should not expect that the person sitting next to us has the exact same opinion as us. They're not gonna. They're just not gonna. But the question becomes then, and what he addresses beautifully in this book is, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do when you have common goals, but you have different opinions? You see where I'm at?
Therein lies the rub.
Therein lies the rub. And he approaches it very he's a professor, so he approaches it from a scholastical approach, research, scientifically, socially, and ultimately allows us to see that we can have diverse views and opinions and approaches.
And a common goal.
And a common goal. So I will tell you, that is why I really, really loved this book. And that's why I'm just going to recommend it to be on your nightstand.
It's going to be there.
It needs to be a bedside book. Okay. So there's one more thing, though, in that story that I want to tell you about that I thought was, I don't know, maybe even as powerful as the other points. I'll let you be the judge of that. And it has to do with the fact, because he's a historian, he really takes us from early slave days all the way through to the civil rights movement, talking about what we talked about, the voices and the things that we thought were important to say. Let me give you an example. So early on, the slave narratives, for example, they were literally just talking about their life and their experience and how hard it was and the gruesomeness, of their experience and dreaming for better days, So it was really all about a story of the life and the lifestyles. They had no concepts of what was going on in the political structure, the social structure, the economic conditions that they were living. They didn't understand those dynamics, so they didn't write about it. However, after Reconstruction, you see people like Ida B. Wells coming on board and others who started talking about what they were seeing, what they were experiencing. And of course, it was a different narrative than what was being printed in the New York Times.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I enjoyed about it, is really realizing that these people were going against the norm by establishing newspapers. They started local flyers and bulletins before there were newspapers. They tried to find ways to capture what was happening in their little communities. They began to understand that they could multiply their voice and amplify it through writing. And through the distribution of their work. So therein came, again, these flyers that would go out that eventually became
the newspapers,
local newspapers and such. And Oh, by the way, as I began to understand how those stories were formed and how they were captured and how they were told, it really made me realize that these were grassroots efforts for people to simply connect with one another. And because they have been
so isolated.
Isolated.
Right.
Right?
And they didn't have any control.
No control. And so I'll give you an example. There might have been, if we kind of fast forward through the early 20s and 30s, where there was a lot of brutality that was happening, as we know, with Reconstruction and Jim Crow laws. And out of that came what do we call when a crowd just go grab folks and kill them? Lynchings, lynchings, all
massacres.
Of that. Yeah, so people taking things into their own hands, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And so that era was going along. Mind you, women wasn't voting, right? Women didn't really have a voice, right? So a person like an Ida B. Wells or others who were writing, oh gosh, my brain is frozen, but who were writing their stories and writing about what was happening in their communities, it was extremely novel. It was very new. Mm-hmm. And it was very courageous because it was very dangerous.
Right.
So I am just completely impressed that not only did they take it upon themselves to write these stories, to document and chronicle their own lives and their own history, that these are the things that formed social opinion. And this is where I want to land, and I'm going to close it here. The reason that I love doing this podcast is that we have an opportunity to shape
social opinion.
Hello.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. It's the same thing. We have to keep telling our story with our voice. It's not like it's right or wrong. It's just yours.
And your own perspective.
And your own perspective. I would not want anyone standing up in court or before anyone explaining something on my behalf. I need to have my own voice. Because they gonna miss them.
Yeah.
Or represented in a way that I would not have. And so the value that I think in what Dr. Henry Louis Gates brings us in the Black Box is that he affirms and validates the power and the need to write historically, to write about our life experiences, to write about what we're seeing, what we're hearing out there in the world.
In this space and time.
In this space and time.
In our space and time.
In our space and time. To chronicle that in a way that is our own. And that's why I love this book.
All right.
You gonna read it, girl?
You know I'm gonna read it.
I want you to read this book.
I'm gonna read it.
Okay. There are modern day W.E.B. Du Boises. There are modern day Frederick Douglasses. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. There are phenomenal Black writers who write history, who write about the social consciousness of the community and the world at large. Mm-hmm. And one of them that I have fallen in love with is Michael Harriot.
Okay.
Michael Harriot wrote a book, and we're going to talk about that. It's called The Black AF History. AF for African American History.
Okay.
And in this book, Tina, let me tell you who should read this book. Folks who like to laugh.
Okay.
Because it's hilarious.
That's me.
That's you.
That's me.
And folks who like history.
That's me too.
Hello. And folks who know that history is just a story on paper. Mm-hmm. It's just another story. And the reason I love this book is that he took historical instances, real, true things that happened, and he brought them to life in a way He animated them like a cartoon almost.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. He talk about, he might talk about George Washington. Sure, you're fine. He might talk about George Washington, but he gonna talk about the man ain't had no teeth, and you know what I'm saying? So he humanizes these huge figures in a way.
We have been taught to put on pedestals.
Right. And he helps us understand that there are other people who were not in the story who influenced the outcomes of the story.
Okay.
Sometimes them was black folks.
I think a lot of times
them was black folks.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was fascinating to hear those small tidbits of contribution. And you know what it reminded me of, Tina?
No, what did it remind you
We
of?
all in this together. And nobody, no man is an island, as they say. And it takes small contributions to establish big things.
See, this is why this sounds to me like it's important, because I don't think that everybody realizes that, it's drops of rain that make up the ocean.
Oh, baby. It's true. It is drops of rain. That's a t-shirt. It's drops of rain that make up the ocean. Yeah. And that's what I love about what Michael Harriot does, is he drops these nuggets little at a time, like one at a time. And before you know it, you understand history in a way you never have.
Okay.
So you get why I'm loving this book, right? That was a great aspect of the story, and it was one of the more important points of it. But I haven't even gotten to the juicy stuff yet.
Oh, well, what's the juicy stuff?
Girl, hold on, hang on to your wig.
All right,
you ain't a wig wearer.
No, I don't do them.
All right, well, let's move on. Here in the Black AF History by Michael Harriot, right? First of all, did I tell you how brilliant this man is? And that I do believe, again, that he is a contemporary. He's a modern day historian. He's brilliant. He brings to life what was. Now, this is the sticky point. His whole reason is also why I love doing this podcast.
Okay.
Is because he is lifting the veil on history in a way that I don't know has been, it's been done, but mostly in cartoons. Do you remember those cartoons where we would watch and they would try to tell the stories of history in an interesting, entertaining way?
You mean like at school?
Like the rock thing. What was that?
What, Plymouth Rock? Which rock?
The rock.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
Schoolhouse Rock.
Bill, how a bill becomes a bill. Yeah. I got you.
Entertaining and informative, right?
Sneaking it in on you.
And he does it in a way that makes you want to go back and look it up. So let me give you an example of that. He talks about this concept that was new to me. I mean, I understood it, but not until I read this book that it became, it illuminated for me the challenges of historians.
Okay.
Historians. Now we're talking about, he's a writer, a black writer, and he's writing about history.
Right.
So he's a historian.
Right.
Historians struggle with something called whitewashing.
Okay.
And let me say it this way. Whitewashing is just like what it sounds. It's making it sound good.
Well, that's pretty much what history...
Well, hold on. Now,
okay,
y'all know you have a cousin who probably, might, let's say you have a cousin. Let's just say you have a cousin.
I have a cousin.
And, they have that 5-finger problem when they go
discount.
That 5-finger discount problem.
Discount, yeah.
And so when they get caught, they are trying to explain to the store owner what happened.
What had happened, see.
That's how they start. See, what had happened, was. So they are retelling their experience.
Even though it's not the actual experience.
That's whitewashing.
Yeah.
That's whitewashing.
Yeah.
They are telling the experience in a way that suits them.
Well, this is why it's important for people to record their own history.
Girl, now you talking.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Because, let's just take, for example, this is not, well, yeah, it kind of sort of is related.
Okay.
Like, my kids got in trouble every Columbus Day.
Okay.
Because I kept telling them that Columbus didn't discover America.
Why you tell them kids that, Tina? They're going to get thrown out of school.
Because how have you discovered something when people are waving at you?
I know.
I'm just saying.
I haven't quite sorted that out. But
it's a matter of the perspective.
That is a perfect example of whitewashing.
Exactly.
That's an example of whitewashing. And it's just a reality that it happens. Like, we don't like it. It's one of those truths that we don't really want to hang our hat on and go, yeah, we did it.
Well, do you think it has to do with the accessibility of the mechanics of being able to tell the story?
Well, that's why we're telling it.
Okay.
That is exactly what's going on. And that's why we are doing Griot Connects podcast.
Absolutely.
Because we are putting that microphone in the mouth of the author, in the mouth of the writer, and giving them the opportunity to tell that story in the way that they experienced it.
Yeah.
Right? They can do the research, right? They can go in and pull the archives. And that's what Michael Harriot has done. And so in his book, what I consumed voraciously was the stories that I'd heard before. These are not unfamiliar historical instances. They are familiar instances that he puts a completely different spin on it by adding to it new characters, a different perspective of what actually happened.
I was going to say what actually happened.
Right. And he's establishing a new baseline for the story, basically. And that is brilliant.
Okay, well.
What you think?
I think it sounds like my stack is going to get maybe about 2 inches higher.
Yeah. I will tell you that this is a must read if you are a person who does love history.
And I do.
Who loves stories and storytelling, and who likes to see it turned on its head.
Right.
That's why you should read this book.
Okay, well then that's definitely on my list.
Right. Black AF History by Michael Harriot.
I don't know if I should be happy you're telling me about these books or not.
It's a bedside book.
Well, I'm just saying.
Go for it.
Books are growing.
Stacking up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree that this should be a bedside book.
I absolutely agree.
All right. Well, I'm going to count on that. And my final bedside book is not quite as heavy. Like, you ain't got to think through the whole book.
Yeah.
But it's well worth it. Honest to Pete, it's well worth it. This book is called That Bird Has My Wings by Jarvis Masters.
Okay.
And it was recommended. I learned of this book through an Oprah book
club.
Yeah. And so, everybody love Oprah. She got it right all the time. Yeah. But the reason this book resonated with me is because of the way, I love words and I love good use of language. Mm-hmm. And funny thing, this book is about a young man who went to prison. He was sentenced to life in prison. And for a crime that he actually did commit.
He did commit
this.
Okay.
This is not a situation where he didn't commit the crime and he's, we're worried, is he going to be exact? It's not that.
Right.
This is a story where he did it.
Okay.
Okay. And he went to prison for it. And it talks about his experience in transformation.
All right.
Now, transformation. Let's start there. Again, I'm going to just give you a couple components of transformation. His life is completely controlled by somebody else.
That would be prison.
That is prison.
That's prison.
I'm trying to make a point.
Okay.
Okay. His life is completely controlled by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to learn how to navigate a place where he has limited control over what he does, what time he gets up, what time he goes to bed, what he eats, what he drinks, when he walks down the hall.
Right.
Pause right there.
Okay.
Because like you said, that's prison right there. And it establishes in most what they call a prison mentality.
Right.
And so I'm going to talk to you about how he works beyond that prison mentality and maintains his humanity. Mm-hmm. That is what got me with this book. And for me, it wasn't about prison. I'm one of those people, I think of the starving children in the sub-Saharan Africa. You know, I am the person who is worried about people who are stuck in lives where, you know, there really aren't a lot of options for them. Mm-hmm. I am the person who thinks about the destruction that happens when you don't have people who inspire and support you.
Okay.
Right? And so in this case, those are the things that drew me to his story. Not that he was in prison. Yeah, he was in prison for doing some stuff and blah, 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 blah. But he's a human. He's a human. And so it was a human story. It was a story for me of resilience and of overcoming and for transformation. So let me start by, I told you that he went into prison. Oh gosh, he was a young man, and I probably should know his age, but no, he was a young person. Okay. Young, and this is this is where I started getting sucked in, because back in the day, Tina, I don't know if you know this about me, I did prison ministry.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, prison ministry, for those of you who aren't familiar, is where you could be a part of a group, a church group, or some kind of independent organization, nonprofit usually, where you go in and you go to various prisons and you may provide some kind of comfort and relief for the day, maybe entertainment. You may go in and read. You may go in and sing songs. You may they go in and read the Bible. They just sometimes will go and listen. And I did that for a couple of years. And as such, one of the things that I took away from that experience, and I went very frequently, was that those guys were just everyday guys.
Just like the guys that you grew up with.
I did not meet one person. Now, mind you, these were, not serious offenders and such, but they were regular people.
Right. Who had made some
They had made choices. Some goofy choices, right? Things that you and I wouldn't do.
Or maybe things that we did do and didn't get caught doing.
That.
I'm just saying.
Right?
Yeah.
And so over the couple of years that I went, the other thing that I noticed is that the guys, when they did dumb things, they were young. And y'all gonna make me cry. Y'all gonna make me cry.
Dumb things,
girl,
young.
These young men were, hopeful. They were high school graduates, most of them. Some had gone to college. They were athletes. They had careers, some of them. And they made bad choices. And so that aside, that was partly why I could relate to his story.
Okay.
But here's the kicker of what really drew me in was his why he was there. Because Jarvis, as a young man, was a product of his environment.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about nature versus nurture, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know that is kind of been the
It's one of those things that, round and round and round and round they go.
right. And, you know, it's not about making an excuse, but it's to understand there is sometimes a why. And so the story around Jarvis, as he breaks down the times in his life where he needed anybody, just anybody, to step up on his behalf, and
it didn't happen.
Yeah. And then one thing led to another, and circumstances landed him where he was. Now, he doesn't make any
excuses.
Not at all. Not at all. But he tells the story in a way that activates for me an empathy that I had not had, even though I had gone 2 years to prison ministry.
Well, it sounds to me like this is an example of there for the grace of God go I.
Amen. Yeah.
And I think all too often, and this is why it's important for us to expand our knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it's very easy to say what we would not do.
Exactly.
And it's very easy to get caught up.
And here's the other thing that I took away from this book and why I thought it was powerful and inspiring. He talks about how he had to literally kind of go inside of himself and tap into that part of himself, his human spirit, the strong part, right? When he was weak, he had to still find strength in himself. He couldn't find it in somebody else. He had to find it within him. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was inspiring for someone who had so little, but had the ability to bring himself beyond his circumstances.
Is he still there?
He is. And he will be there. Yes. He is, and he will be there. And so the question, because I'm so glad you brought that up, is it possible, people, to live in a world of lack and find contentment?
Oh, well, I think that it's absolutely possible. But I also think it has to do, it almost has to do with like being a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Like you have to literally transcend.
You have to transcend. And I think that's the word.
You have to transcend this kind of culturalization that we have experienced.
Yes. And that transcendence becomes your freedom.
Right. Because the truth of the matter is, freedom is in your mind.
Yeah, that's like the last chapter.
Yeah, I'm going to have to read that too.
You have to read this book, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. So for anyone who has ever been with their back against the wall and you just don't even have the strength to move forward, open this book. It's called That Bird Has My Wings by Jarvis Masters. Okay. And if you know someone who is struggling with transformation because of all the stuff that they got going on around them and in their world and coming up against them, give them this book, because it might be just that.
It might be the spark.
That will take them to the next place. And if for some reason you even run up on a stranger who seems like they just aren't sure how they're going to make it to that next place, just remember this book. And I just hope and pray that you remember that the human spirit can and does rise above lack
Absolutely.
It rises above pain, and it can rise above these kinds of turmoil and trauma, but it's inside of us.
Indomitable.
Indomitable. That would be that. So that's why I love this bedside book, is because I think it is a must read to keep us moving forward, one foot in front of the other, no matter what.
Yeah, well,
Bedside Books. Yeah?
works for me.
Okay, you're going to read this one too.
I'm going to read it too.
All right, I hope everyone reads it.
My list.
Yeah.
I'm going to need a little red wagon.
For all these bedside
Yes.
books. That's a good one though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I just want to do a quick recap of our bedside books for our audience. So today we talked about 3 books. The first book was The Black Box by Henry Louis Gates, and that's the one where you are exploring historical references to the Black narrative by Black authors.
Okay.
And the second one was Black AF History by Michael Harriot, one of my favorites. And here he is reimagining American history.
I don't know if reimagining.
He's telling it like it is.
Yeah.
Well, he's
Sounds like
telling
me.
his version.
Okay.
And that's the whole point that Henry Louis Gates was making.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's it. He's telling it like it is, like he want to tell it.
Right.
Okay, that's book number 2. I hope y'all get that book. And then the third one was That Bird Has My Wings by Jarvis Masters.
Okay.
And that was the heart pull on, shit happens.
Every day.
And this poor guy, he's a great guy. He tells an incredible story of resilience and overcoming.
And it also sounds like a cautionary tale.
And it is a cautionary tale. So I would absolutely encourage you to bring these books to your bedside and enjoy it. Until the next time Griot Connects podcast can bring you some more good stuff to read, listen to. We hope to see you soon. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.